He found the boy curled in the backseat, clutching a backpack to his chest. Inside was a single handwritten letter, and it was addressed to him. The billionaire stood frozen in the cold, holding a secret that had just shattered his world, left by a sleeping child he'd never met. The man was Elias Vance, a self-made billionaire known for his ruthless focus, now confronted by a 9-year-old boy named Leo. This was no accident. The letter in that backpack held a single sentence that would force Elias to question every truth about his past and make an impossible choice about the future. He could call the police, or he could wake the child and ask the one question he was afraid to answer. Elias Vance built his fortune on a simple, brutal principle: control the variables. From the military-grade encryption software that made his first million to the private equity firm that built his empire, every decision was a calculated move to eliminate uncertainty. His personal life was no different, a series of contained, manageable compartments. The high-rise apartment with a view of nothing but sky. The twice-weekly meetings with a personal trainer who didn't ask personal questions. The carefully curated silence that followed him like a shadow. At 58, he had everything arranged to avoid surprises. Then, on a Tuesday evening in late October, he found a child in his car. The boy's name was Leo, though Elias wouldn't learn that until later. For now, he was just a small shape curled against the buttersoft leather of the backseat, lost in a deep, exhausted sleep. He wore a faded gray hoodie several sizes too large, the cuffs rolled multiple times over small hands. His sneakers were scuffed nearly white at the toes. On the floorboard beside him lay a worn blue backpack, its zipper partly open. The letter was just visible inside, a single sheet of lined notebook paper, folded in thirds. Elias' full name and the title Dad were written on the front in careful, penciled block letters. The car was parked in the secured underground garage of his office building, a place accessible only by keycard or biometric scan. Every camera, every sensor, every protocol was designed to keep the outside world precisely where Elias wanted it, outside. And yet, here was the ultimate variable, sleeping in his sanctuary. His first instinct, honed by decades of risk assessment, was to call security. His hand was already moving toward his phone. But then he looked at the boy's face, peaceful in sleep, and the raw, illogical truth of the situation stalled him. This wasn't a threat, it was a plea. Leo's journey to that backseat began 12 hours earlier and 6 miles away, in a neighborhood of faded duplexes and chain-link fences. He lived with his mother, Sophia, in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The air always carried the faint, warm smell of detergent and dryer sheets. Sophia worked 2 jobs, mornings at a call center, evenings cleaning offices, a schedule that left Leo to navigate the hours after school on his own. He was a quiet boy, a watcher who had learned to be small and unobtrusive. His world was a map of safe places: the library branch with the kind librarian, the park bench farthest from the street, the bus route he could ride for an hour with a single transfer. Sophia was sick. She called it a bad flu, but the cough had lasted for weeks, and the tiredness in her eyes had deepened into something permanent. She had missed 3 shifts at the cleaning job, and the fear in their apartment was a tangible thing, thicker than the smell of medicine. 2 nights ago, Leo had woken to find her sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, a stack of past-due bills beside her. She hadn't heard him approach. She was just staring at a single photograph, an old picture of herself as a much younger woman, smiling next to a man whose face Leo did not recognize. When she saw Leo, she quickly put the photo away, but the look on her face, a mixture of deep sadness and sudden, fierce calculation, stayed with him. That Tuesday, the school nurse sent Leo home early with a note about a lice check. He found the apartment empty, a different kind of silence hanging in the air. On the kitchen table beside a half-empty glass of water was a different note. In his mother's hurried script it read, "Leo had to go see about something important, back late, food in fridge, love you mom." It was the "see about something important" that felt wrong. It was a phrase she used for things that never worked out. The fear crystallized into a plan. He knew where his mother worked her evening job, the cluster of downtown skyscrapers known as the Vance Tower Complex. He would go find her. He packed his backpack with a sweater, an apple, a water bottle, and the letter he had been writing for 3 weeks, the one he hadn't had the courage to give her. The trip downtown was an epic voyage for a 9-year-old. He used the emergency transit pass his mother kept in a coffee tin. He got on the wrong bus once, then corrected his course with a focus that belied his age. He arrived at the gleaming plaza of Vance Tower as the sun was setting, the building's mirrored surface reflecting a cold, orange sky. He didn't know which entrance the cleaners used. He wandered the perimeter, growing smaller and more invisible as the suited crowds thinned out. Security guards paced in their glass lobbies. Leo's courage, a fragile thing, began to crack. That's when he saw the parking garage entrance. A car had just exited and the heavy metal door was slowly descending. On an impulse, he darted under it, slipping into the concrete cavern just before it sealed shut. The air was cool and smelled of oil and concrete. It was a labyrinth of silent, expensive vehicles. He walked the rows, looking for nothing in particular, just a place to rest and think. He was tired, his feet ached, and the apple in his backpack was long gone. Then he saw the dark sedan. It was black and sleek, and unlike most of the others, it was unlocked. A soft click echoed as he pulled the handle. The interior light came on, revealing an impossibly clean and spacious backseat. It looked like the safest place in the world. He climbed in, curled up, hugging his backpack, and within minutes the exhaustion of the day pulled him under. Back in the present, standing in the chill of the garage, Elias Vance finally moved. He didn't call security. Instead, he slowly, quietly opened the back door. He reached into the backpack and pulled out the letter. The pencil lines were smudged in places as if erased and rewritten. It was addressed to Dad. The salutation alone sent a cold shock through him. He unfolded it. The message inside was not a long explanation. It was not a demand. It was just 8 words, written with the desperate simplicity of a child. "My mom is sick. Can you help us, please?" There was no signature. Below it, as a postscript, was another line. "Her name is Sofia Mendez. She said you knew her a long time ago." The name hit Elias like a physical blow. Sofia Mendez. A cascade of memory. A summer internship 25 years ago. A bright, fierce young woman from the logistics department. A brief, intense connection he had compartmentalized as a youthful mistake and buried under decades of ambition. A connection he had severed completely when it threatened to become complicated. He had controlled that variable, or so he thought. He looked from the letter to the sleeping boy, to the curve of his cheek, the shape of his brow. He looked for himself and saw, with a dawning, terrifying clarity, a ghost of his own younger face. The control he had spent a lifetime building shattered in that silent garage. The cliffhanger of his entire life was sleeping in his backseat. He had to wake him up. He had to ask the question. He reached out a hand, his own trembling slightly, and gently shook the boy's shoulder. Leo's eyes fluttered open, blinking in the dim light, focusing on the strange man leaning over him. And Elias spoke, his voice a dry whisper he barely recognized. Leo's eyes flew wide with a fear that was immediate and animal. He scrambled backward against the door, his backpack clutched like a shield. "Don't call the police," he blurted, his voice high with panic. "I'll go, I'm sorry. I just needed to find my mom." Elias withdrew his hand, holding up both palms in a gesture of surrender he hadn't used in 30 years. "I'm not calling anyone," he said, forcing a calm he didn't feel into his voice. "My name is Elias. You're in my car. You're safe." The word safe felt foreign on his tongue. Leo stared, his chest rising and falling rapidly, assessing the man in the expensive suit just as Elias had assessed 1,000 boardrooms. The boy's gaze darted to the letter, now in Elias' other hand, and his face crumpled. "You read it." "I did," Elias admitted. "Leo, is it? You wrote this to me." The boy gave a tight, miserable nod. "Where is your mother now, Sofia?" "I don't know," Leo whispered, the confession breaking him. A tear traced a clean line through the dust on his cheek. "She left a note. She said she was going to see about something important. She works cleaning offices here at night, but she wasn't at her usual place. I thought, I thought maybe she came to see you, because of the picture." The world tilted another degree. What picture? Leo fumbled with his backpack's front pocket and pulled out a worn photograph, its edges softened from handling. He handed it over. It was a candid shot, 25 years old if it was a day. A younger Elias, his hair still dark and full, was laughing at a company picnic, his arms slung casually around the shoulders of a vibrant young woman with dark, curling hair and a smile that seemed to challenge the camera. Sofia Mendez. The memory, now unearthed, was vivid and punishing. He remembered her intelligence, her sharp wit that could dismantle his arrogant posturing, the way she argued logistics with a brilliance that fascinated him. And he remembered the cold, calculated silence he offered her when she told him she was pregnant. He had just secured the venture capital for his first company. A pregnancy was a variable he could not afford. He gave her money. He suggested options. He walked away and never looked back, building walls so high he convinced himself nothing from that life could ever scale them. He had been wrong. The proof was trembling in his backseat. "Leo," Elias said, his throat tight. "How old are you?" "9," the boy said. "My birthday was in April." The math was incontrovertible. A silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of the garage ventilation and the weight of a quarter-century of denied history. Elias made a decision. It was not a corporate acquisition. It was not a strategic pivot. It was the only move left on a board he no longer recognized. "We need to find your mother, right now. Do you have a phone, does she?" Leo shook his head. "Her phone got cut off last week." Elias' mind, a machine built for complex problems, began to map the crisis. First, secure the child. Second, locate Sofia. Third, control the narrative before it controlled him. He pulled out his own phone and sent a 2-word text to his head of security, "Marcus, personal emergency, my office. Now." Then he looked at Leo. "I'm going to help you, but we need to go somewhere we can talk, and we need to start looking for Sofia immediately. Will you come with me?" The boy searched his face for a long moment, looking for the trap. Finally, he nodded. Elias did not take Leo to his sterile penthouse. He took him to the only place that felt vaguely appropriate, the all-night diner 2 blocks from the tower, a place of vinyl booths and fluorescent lights he hadn't entered in decades. He ordered Leo a hot chocolate and a grilled cheese, watching as the boy ate with the focused intensity of someone who hadn't eaten in too long. Between bites, the story spilled out in fractured pieces. Sofia's persistent cough that turned into crushing fatigue. The missed work. The whispers of insurance and doctor bills Leo overheard during phone calls Sofia thought he was asleep for. The mounting pile of envelopes with final notice, stamped in red. The increasing silence, the hollow look in his mother's eyes. "She talks about you sometimes," Leo said quietly, not looking up from his plate. "Not by name, she just says he was a force of nature. He knew what he wanted and nothing got in his way." She didn't sound mad. She sounded tired. The description was a knife to Elias' carefully constructed identity. He was a force of nature that had leveled her life and forgotten the debris. Marcus, a former Special Forces operative with a calm as deep as a mineshaft, arrived within 20 minutes. Elias met him outside the diner booth, speaking in low, urgent tones. He handed him the photograph. "Her name is Sofia Mendez. She may be ill. She's missing. Her son is with me. I need her found. Use every resource. Hospital admissions, clinic records, traffic cameras near her last known address, everything. This is the absolute priority. And Marcus, discretion is non-negotiable. This stays within your team only." Marcus's eyes flicked to Leo in the booth, then back to Elias. "No judgment, just assessment." "Understood, sir. We'll find her." Back in the booth, Elias' phone buzzed with the first wave of consequences. It was his chief counsel, Diana. "Elias, a heads up. I just got a call from a reporter at the Tribune. Off-the-record inquiry. They're asking if we have any comment on a rumor about a child being brought to your offices tonight under unusual circumstances. They're sniffing around. What's happening?" The walls were already closing in. Someone in the building's security detail had seen something, or a camera feed had been noticed. In the digital age, there were no truly private moments, only delays before publicity. "Handle it, Diana," Elias said, his voice low. "No comment. Kill the story. Use whatever leverage we have with the publisher. This is a private family matter." The word family hung in the air, absurd and terrifying. "Family," Diana repeated, her tone sharpening with professional alarm. "Elias, you need to brief me. Now. Not over the phone, tomorrow, just stop the story." He ended the call. When he looked up, Leo was watching him, his food forgotten. "Are you in trouble because of me?" the boy asked. "No, Leo," Elias said, the lie coming easily. "This is my trouble. It just found me a little later than it should have." He took Leo to a secure, discreet serviced apartment he kept for high-profile international clients. It was neutral, anonymous, and safe. He called a private medical service to have a doctor check the boy, who was exhausted and slightly dehydrated but otherwise okay. While Leo slept in a bedroom too large for him, Elias sat in the living room, staring at the city lights, his mind racing. Marcus's team was working through the night. His own empire, the entity he controlled so completely, now felt like a separate, hostile organism that might turn on him at any moment. At 4:17 in the morning, Marcus called. His voice was grim. "We found her, sir. St. Vincent's Hospital. She was admitted through the emergency room late yesterday afternoon. Pneumonia severe. They're listing her as critical but stable. She's in the ICU." Elias' breath left his body. "Is she conscious?" "Intermittently. The medical team has been asking about next of kin. They only have her name and an old address." "I'm her next of kin," Elias heard himself say. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Secure the floor, no press, no questions." He stood outside Leo's door, listening to the boy's steady breathing. He couldn't leave him alone. Waking him felt cruel, but leaving him to wake in a strange place to an empty apartment was crueler. He went in and gently shook his shoulder. "Leo, we found your mom. We need to go see her." The drive to St. Vincent's was a silent blur. Leo, wrapped in a blanket from the apartment, stared out the window. Elias' mind was a checklist of disasters to be managed. The hospital was a sprawling, old brick building, its fluorescent-lit halls a stark contrast to the private medical centers he was accustomed to. Marcus had a man at the entrance who guided them through a service elevator to the intensive care unit. The sight of Sophia in the hospital bed was a physical shock. The vibrant woman from the photograph was gone, replaced by a pale, fragile figure dwarfed by machines and tubes. Her eyes were closed, an oxygen mask covering much of her face. Her hair, still dark but streaked with gray he didn't remember, was fanned across the pillow. Leo made a small, choked sound and ran to the bedside, carefully taking her hand. "Mama." Her eyelids fluttered. She turned her head slowly, her gaze foggy with medication and fever. It focused on Leo, and a weak, profound relief softened her features. Then her eyes traveled past her son and landed on Elias, who stood frozen in the doorway. A complex storm of emotions passed through her exhausted face: recognition, shock, a flash of old anger, and finally, a deep, resigned sadness. She lifted a finger just an inch off the sheet and pointed it weakly at Elias, then let it drop. Her message was clear: "You." The attending physician, a weary man in his 50s, pulled Elias aside. "Are you family?" "I am," Elias stated, leaving no room for doubt. "What is her prognosis?" "It's serious. The pneumonia is advanced. She's septic. Her body is under immense strain and she's severely malnourished, which isn't helping her fight it. We have her on broad-spectrum antibiotics and supporting her breathing. The next 48 hours are critical." The doctor paused, looking at him with the practiced scrutiny of someone who has seen every kind of family drama. "She has no insurance on file. Do you know her coverage situation?" Elias knew. He knew because his past choices had helped create it. "Handle her as a private patient. Put everything on my account. I want the best specialists in the city consulted. Money is not an object." The doctor nodded, making a note. We'll need a proper family contact for consent forms, treatment decisions. You have me, Elias said, the full weight of those words settling on him for the first time. Back in the room, Leo was talking softly to his mother, who had closed her eyes again, her hand resting over his. Elias felt like an intruder in a sacred space. This was the consequence, not of a business rival or a market crash, but of a personal failure so old it had grown roots. He had spent a lifetime building a fortress, and its weakest point had always been the foundation he'd left cracked and forgotten. As dawn broke, painting the hospital room in cold gray light, his phone vibrated again. It was Diana, and her tone had lost all its professional polish. It was pure, unvarnished alarm. Elias, the story didn't die, it mutated. The Tribune is running a piece in their online edition in an hour. The headline is Vance's Secret. Billionaire's Midnight Crisis Sparks Hospital Vigil. They have a photo, Elias. A blurry long-lens shot of you and a child entering the hospital last night. They're not nomming the boy, but they've connected Sofia Mendez to you through old corporate records. They're asking the question everyone will be asking by lunchtime. She took a sharp breath. They want to know if Leo Mendez is your son. The world, it seemed, had been waiting for this story. The Tribune piece went live at 6 a.m., and within the hour it was a tremor running through the financial news feeds, the gossip sites, and social media. The narrative wrote itself. Reclusive billionaire, secret sick mother, mysterious child. The photo was damning in its mundanity. Elias, his face etched with an unfamiliar anxiety, holding a hospital door open for a small, blanket-trapped figure. The caption asked the question Diana had warned him about, a long-lost heir. By 7 a.m., 3 satellite trucks were parked outside St. Vincent's main entrance. Inside the ICU, a different kind of storm was brewing. The medical team, now aware of who their wealthy benefactor was, and the media circus outside became tense and overly formal. A hospital administrator arrived, wringing her hands, talking about patient privacy and disruptions. Elias silenced her with a look and a quiet reminder that his foundation was one of the hospital's largest donors. The privilege he had always wielded now felt like a brittle shield, but he used it without hesitation for Sofia and Leo. Leo, who had barely left his mother's bedside, was oblivious to the outside frenzy until a young nurse, thinking she was being kind, mentioned the paparazzi downstairs. The boy's face went pale. "Are they here because of me?" he asked Elias. "Because of us asterisk," Elias corrected, placing a hand on his shoulder. "And we will handle it. Your only job is to be with your mom." But the boy's sense of safety, so newly formed, had been fractured. He started jumping at every sound in the hallway. The siege escalated. By 9 a.m., Elias' assistant was frantically relaying messages. The board of his flagship company, Vance Capital, demanded an emergency conference call. Major investors were seeking clarity. A business cable network was preparing a segment titled Vance's Vulnerability: How a Personal Scandal Could Shake an Empire. His meticulously controlled life was being picked apart in real time, and the axis around which it all spun was the frail woman in the bed and the frightened boy beside her. It was then, in the eye of the hurricane, that Sofia opened her eyes. The fog of medication had receded slightly, replaced by a sharp, lucid exhaustion. She saw Leo first, managed a weak smile, and squeezed his hand. Then her gaze found Elias, standing apart like a sentinel. She motioned him closer with a slight tilt of her head. Her voice was a dry rasp, amplified by the oxygen mask. "Leo, sweetheart, can you go ask the nurse for more ice chips for me?" It was a transparent request for privacy. Leo, ever perceptive, nodded and slipped out. When the door clicked shut, Sofia's eyes hardened. "The news," she stated. "I heard the nurses." "I'm sorry," Elias said, the apology utterly inadequate. A faint, bitter smile touched her lips. "You always did draw a crowd, Elias. Now you've drawn one to my deathbed." "Don't say that. You're getting the best care. You're going to get through this." She ignored his assurance. "Why are you here? Really, is it guilt? Or is it because he looks like you? She coughed, a racking sound that shook her whole frame. When she recovered, she fixed him with a stare. I never asked you for a thing, not in 25 years. I raised our son alone. I built a life. It wasn't the life you have, but it was honest and it was ours. The effort of speech drained her and she paused, gathering strength. I got sick. The system ground me down. I was going to lose everything. The apartment, my stability, my ability to care for him. I was out of options, so I told him. Elias felt cold. Told him what exactly? I told him his father's name. I showed him the picture. I said, if anything ever happened to me, if it got truly desperate, he could try to find you. I never thought he'd do it. I never thought he'd be brave enough or desperate enough. A tear escaped, tracing a path into her hairline. I wrote a letter for him to give you. A real one, explaining everything, asking for help for him, not for me. He must have been too scared to give you that one. He wrote his own. The revelation was a second gut punch. The simple, devastating letter from Leo was a substitute. The real letter from Sophia was still out there, a ghost of a plea he had never received. The full scope of her quiet struggle and her last resort plan settled over him with a crushing weight. I will fix this, Sophia, he said, the words a vow. I will make sure Leo is safe and loved and provided for, no matter what. Provided for, she echoed, the words tasting sour. Is that what you think this is about, a trust fund? I didn't send him for an inheritance, Elias. I sent him for a father, because a 9-year-old boy should have one, especially when his mother is. She couldn't finish the sentence. The monitor beside her bed gave a soft, persistent chime. Her energy was spent. Get out, please, just take care of him, and deal with the mess you brought to my door. Elias left the room, the words of father echoing in his skull. In the family waiting area, he found Leo staring at a muted television mounted on the wall. It was tuned to a financial news channel. On the screen, below a banner that read VANCE in crisis, was a graph charting a sharp, sudden drop in the stock price of his publicly traded holding company. A talking head was speculating about governance risks and reputational damage. Leo pointed a trembling finger at the screen. That's you. They're saying you're losing money because of us. Before Elias could respond, his phone rang. It was David Chen, his most trusted board member and the closest thing he had to a friend. Elias, you need to get ahead of this. The call with the full board is in 30 minutes. They're scared. They want a statement, a paternity test, a plan to quarantine this from the business. You need to give them something or they will start making moves to protect themselves. Elias looked from the plummeting stock chart to Leo's terrified face. A lifetime of instinct screamed at him to do what David said. Control, compartmentalize, issue a carefully worded statement and hide. But another voice, new and fragile, spoke differently. It was the voice that had kept him from calling security in the garage. He made a decision. Cancel the board call, David. I'm not giving them a statement. I'm giving one to everyone. Elias, that's insane. You can't just... I'll call you later. He hung up. He knelt in front of Leo, putting himself at eye level. Leo, those people on TV are talking about numbers. They don't know you. They don't know your mom. I'm about to go talk to the reporters downstairs. I'm going to tell them the truth. It might make things louder for a little while, but I need you to know something. None of that noise out there changes what's in here. You are my son, and I am not leaving you again. Leo stared at him, his eyes searching Elias' face for the lie, finding none. He threw his arms around Elias' neck, a silent, desperate hug that conveyed more than words ever could. In that moment, the last vestige of the old Elias Vance, the man of pure calculation, dissolved. 20 minutes later, Elias Vance walked out of St. Vincent's Hospital through the main doors, directly into the flashing glare of a dozen cameras. He stopped at the top of the steps, raised a hand for silence, and without notes, without a PR advisor, began to speak. His voice was steady, carrying over the murmur of the crowd. For the past 25 years, I have lived by a single principle: control. I believed my success and the stability of everything I built depended on it. This morning you are here because I lost control, or rather because I discovered I never really had it. He paused, the cameras whirring. The woman inside this hospital, Sofia Mendez, is the mother of my son, Leo. I have known this for less than a day. For nearly a decade, I did not. That is my failure and mine alone. My focus now is not on protecting my privacy or my portfolio, but on two people, on Sofia in her fight for health and on Leo in his need for a father. There will be no further comments on this personal matter. I ask you for their sakes to respect their privacy. Thank you. He turned and walked back inside, leaving a stunned silence that quickly erupted into a cacophony of shouted questions. The statement was a seismic event. It was a full, public admission with no caveats, no corporate jargon, just raw, personal accountability. Across the internet, the narrative shifted in an instant, from scandal to human drama, from secret heir to Billionaire's stunning confession. But back in the quiet of the ICU corridor, the personal cost was just coming due. As Elias returned to the floor, the lead intensivist met him, her expression grave. "Mr. Vance, Sophia's condition has destabilized. Her blood pressure is dropping. We believe she's developed acute respiratory distress syndrome, a severe complication of the pneumonia. We need to intubate her, put her on a ventilator to breathe for her. She's not fully conscious to consent. As her next of kin, the decision is yours." Time stopped in the fluorescent-lit hallway. The doctor's words, "The decision is yours," hung between them, a verdict more final than any boardroom vote. Inside the room, machines beeped a frantic cadence around Sofia. Down the hall, Leo waited, trusting him to make things right. Elias Vance, who had built an empire on decisive action, had never been more afraid. "Will it save her?" he asked, his voice stripped bare. "It gives her the best chance. Her body is too weak to breathe on its own. The machine will do the work while the antibiotics fight the infection. Without it," the doctor left the sentence unfinished. The implication was clear. Elias looked through the glass at Sofia, a woman fighting a war on two fronts, against the sepsis in her blood and the history in the room. He thought of her last words, "Take care of him." This decision was the first terrible test of that command. "Do it," he said. "Whatever she needs, do it now." What followed was a blur of controlled chaos. Leo had to be gently but firmly kept away as a team of specialists moved in. Elias knelt before the boy, holding his shoulders. "They're helping her breathe, Leo. The machine is going to help her so she can rest and get better. It's going to look scary, but it's help. Do you understand?" Leo nodded, a tremor in his jaw, his eyes huge. "Is she going to die?" "Not if I can help it," Elias said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The next 72 hours were a vigil measured in heartbeats and oxygen saturation percentages. Elias moved a cot into the private room they secured for Sofia. He canceled every meeting, every call. The empire would have to manage itself. His entire world narrowed to the hushed rhythm of the ICU and the small boy who mirrored his own vigil. He learned to read the monitors. He learned the nurses' names, Janet, who brought Leo extra pudding, and Carlos, who explained the ventilator settings in gentle terms. He sat for hours, talking to the unconscious Sofia, telling her about her son's bravery, about the diner grilled cheese, about the stock drop that no longer mattered. He apologized over and over for the time lost, for the silence, for his cowardice. It was a confession with only machines as witnesses. Leo rarely left the hospital. He did his school worksheets at the bedside. He drew pictures, a get-well card for his mom, and unexpectedly, one for Elias, a stick-figure man in a square suit next to a tall building, with a lopsided sun in the corner. He gave it without comment. Elias framed it in his mind, a treasure more valuable than any acquisition. The public storm, meanwhile, began to change. His raw, unscripted statement had disarmed the media's most vicious instincts. The narrative slowly pivoted from scandal to a poignant human story. A follow-up piece highlighted St. Vincent's underfunded ICU and prompted a wave of donations in Sofia's name. David Chen, his board member, called again. His tone shifted from panic to cautious respect. The stock stabilized, Elias. It even ticked back up. People respect decisiveness. Even personal decisiveness. Just keep us updated. On the fourth day, a breakthrough. Sophia's infection markers began to fall. Her fever broke. Slowly, carefully, the medical team reduced her sedation. Elias and Leo were there when her eyes finally opened, clear and aware, focusing on the tube in her mouth with confusion and fear. A nurse calmly explained where she was. Sophia's gaze found Leo, then Elias, and filled with a profound, weary relief. She couldn't speak, but she blinked slowly, once for yes, twice for no, and squeezed Leo's hand. The long road back had begun. Weaning from the ventilator took another week. Transfer out of the ICU took 2. Through it all, Elias was a constant. He wasn't just a benefactor. He was the person who learned how to adjust her pillows, who fetched the specific lip balm she liked, who sat through the painful, grinding sessions of physical therapy as she relearned how to sit up, then stand, then take a shuffling step. One afternoon, as Sophia napped in her new step-down room, Leo looked up from a puzzle. "You stayed," he said simply. "I told you I would," Elias replied. "I know, but you really stayed." It was the finest compliment he had ever received. The day Sophia was finally discharged, 6 weeks after she was admitted, was a bright, cold morning. The paparazzi were long gone. Elias had arranged for a private ambulance to take her to a convalescent home, but Sophia refused. "I want to go home," she said, her voice still weak but firm. "My home, with Leo." So he took them to the apartment above the laundromat. He saw it through new eyes, not as a place of poverty, but as a place of her resilience. The framed pictures of Leo, the thriving potted plant on the windowsill, the neatly mended couch cover. This was the life she had built. He hired round-the-clock in-home nursing and a physical therapist who would come to her. That first night back, Elias ordered food from Sophia's favorite takeout place, the one she'd mentioned weeks before. They ate at her small kitchen table. The conversation was quiet, filled with the ordinary details of recovery. After Leo went to bed, Sophia gestured for Elias to sit. "The doctors told me what you did," she said. "The specialists, the private floor, the everything. They also told me you were here every day. I had a lot of time to make up for." She studied him, the sharp assessment he was coming to know. "This isn't a transaction, Elias. You can't buy your way out of this one." "I know," he said, and for the first time he truly did. "I'm not trying to, I'm just showing up, however you'll let me." A long silence passed. "Then he needs you, not your money. He asks 100 questions about everything. He's curious about how buildings are built, how companies work. He's been trying to hide it, but he's proud of you. It's infuriating." She almost smiled. "Can I?" Elias hesitated. "Can I see him regularly, be part of his life on your terms?" Sophia looked toward the bedroom where Leo slept. "Yes," she said finally, "on my terms." The terms were strict and Elias welcomed them. Weekday dinners, help with homework, every other weekend starting with just afternoons. He was to be a parent, not a parade. He sold the sterile penthouse and bought a smaller, lived-in house with a big backyard closer to their neighborhood. Leo picked out his room. The first weekend Leo stayed over, they built a model rocket and spent hours trying to get it to launch straight. It was a catastrophic, glorious failure. They lay in the grass, laughing, and Elias felt a joy so simple it was revolutionary. He found Sophia's original letter to him months later, while helping her sort through a box of old papers. It was in a sealed envelope, tucked between Leo's baby pictures. His name was on the front. His hands shook as he opened it. It was dated just a month before Leo found him. Elias asterisk it began. "If you're reading this, things have gone very wrong and my brave boy has done what I could not. I am ill. The outlook is uncertain. I am not writing to shame you or to claim anything from a past you clearly wished closed. I am writing to introduce you to your son, Leo. He is kind and clever and so much better than both of us. If I am not here, he will be alone. I am asking you not as the man I knew, but as the father he has never met, to please make sure he is not alone. See that he is safe. See that he is loved. He is the best part of my life, and I think if you let him, he could be the best part of yours too." Sophia. Elias cried. He showed the letter to Sophia, who looked at it with a distant sadness. I was working up the courage to send it, she said. But then I got so sick so fast. He must have found it when he was packing his bag. He wrote his own because mine asked for too much. It didn't ask for enough, Elias said. As Sophia regained her strength, they settled into an unorthodox but functioning family rhythm. Elias' world, once so vast and impersonal, now had a fixed, precious center. He stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company, promoting David Chen to CEO. He told the board his focus was shifting to long-term legacy projects. They approved. The stock was stable, and the Vance family story had become, strangely, a point of brand resilience. 1 year to the day after Leo climbed into his car, Elias established the Mendez-Vance Foundation. The name was non-negotiable. Its mission was to fund medical debt relief and housing stability for single parents facing critical illness. The first board meeting included Sophia, who reviewed every grant proposal with the eye of someone who had been on the other side of the desk. At the foundation's launch gala, Leo, now 10, stood beside him at the podium. When it was his turn to speak, he looked out at the black-tie crowd, then at Elias, and simply said, "My dad says that the most important thing you can control is showing up for the people who need you. He's right. Thank you for showing up tonight." The applause was thunderous. Later, as the event wound down, Sophia, leaning lightly on a cane, came to stand beside Elias. "You're good for him," she said. "He's good for me," Elias replied. She nodded, looking at their son, who was seriously explaining the foundation's website to a bemused philanthropist. "We all are," she said quietly, and for the first time she took his hand, not out of necessity but solidarity. The journey that began with a child's plea in a dark garage had led them here, to a shared purpose, a hard-won peace, and the quiet, enduring understanding that sometimes the greatest fortunes are not the ones you build, but the ones you finally open your eyes to see. The story of Elias Vance and Leo Mendez asks a quiet, profound question that lingers long after the headlines fade. What is a life built for? For decades, Elias measured his acquisitions, in net worth, in the controlled silence of empty rooms. He believed he was constructing a monument to success. He discovered he was merely building a very comfortable cage. The key to that cage wasn't a business strategy. It was a child's handwritten note, a plea for help that bypassed every defense to speak directly to the man he had forgotten how to be. Their journey reminds us that the most pivotal moments rarely arrive with fanfare. They come in the ordinary, desperate spaces, a cold garage, a hospital hallway, a kitchen table conversation. They ask us not for grand gestures, but for simple, sustained presence. To see someone, to stay, to choose again and again the messy human connection over the clean, isolated control. Elias found his son not through intention, but through a failure of his own system. In doing so, he found himself. Sophia, in her greatest vulnerability, taught a billionaire about true strength. And Leo, with a bravery born of love, mended a fracture 25 years in the making. This is the hidden algebra of human connection. Sometimes, in reaching out to save another, we accidentally rescue ourselves. The empire Elias Vance built still stands, but his legacy is no longer just in steel and glass and stock portfolios. It is in the foundation that bears two names. It is in the quiet confidence of a boy who knows he belongs. It is in the hard-won trust of a woman who learned to let someone share the load. Their story is a testament to the idea that it is never too late to rebuild, to repair, to finally come home. If this story resonated with you, consider what it means to show up in your own life. Who have you seen that needs something? What connection have you been too busy or too afraid to make? The next chapter is always written by the choices we make today. Thank you for sharing this time with us. If you believe in the power of second chances and stories that remind us of our shared humanity, please subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button if this moved you, and share it with someone who needs to hear that change is possible. Tell us in the comments, what moment in your life felt like a turning point you didn't see coming? We wish you courage, connection, and the wisdom to see the hidden opportunities for kindness that surround you every day. Because you never know, the moment that changes everything might be waiting for you just outside your door.